And I want you to give it up for Cat Ash.
Thanks. This is going to be hard. I've never told this story. The first time my son died, it was 6 a.m. It had been a night of broken sleep and alarms, and I was curled up in the adult-size hospital bed next to him. He was 13 pounds, but they always gave us a hospital bed for an adult so that myself or my husband could sleep with him. And I was fully dressed, because that's how you dress when you're in the hospital, but you're not in the hospital. And I thought the night was over. The sun had started to come up. The sky had gone from black to cerulean, and there was a silver line on the horizon. So I opened my eyes, and I was looking at my son, and he was pink-cheeked. He had the chubbiest cheeks. And I noticed that he was getting paler and paler, and then he was starting to turn blue. And the alarm above the bed gave this kind of little shout that escalated to a full scream, and everybody descended on his room. Everyone was around us. They were doing things frantically. They were looking at the monitors, but I was only looking at him. And I watched his face, and it was so peaceful. His eyes were closed. He wasn't struggling. His lips were blue, completely blue, but he wasn't struggling, and he was at peace. And I said to the nurse, "Give him to me," because we hadn't been able to move him for 3.5, 4 days because he just had major surgery, and he was healing, and we couldn't move him around because he was just a baby. And the nurse put him in my arms, and I told him, "James, it's okay if you go. Mommy and Daddy are going to be okay. You can go. It's okay." And my husband was standing beside the bed, and he said, "I'm not ready." And I said, "I know. We're never going to be ready, but we're here with him." And he kept saying, "I'm not ready." And they were breathing for him, and they turned off they didn't turn off the ventilator then. They were breathing for him manually. And I said, "It's okay, James." And my husband said, "I'm not ready." And we watched his respirations drop from 60 to 40 to 10 to 0. And his heart rate dropped from 100 to 80 to 0. And there was nothing. There was just quiet in the room. Everyone was standing around us. And the nurse said, "Do you want epinephrine?" And I said, "No, we don't want anything else." And my husband said, "I'm not ready." And I said, "It's okay." And I think my son heard him because his heart rate started to come back, and his breathing started to come back, and his oxygen levels came up. And he was okay. But I had seen it on his face, and I knew it was time to let him go, and I knew he was tired, and it was the end. So we called his grandparents, my husband's parents. We called his aunts and uncles, and they all gathered around his bedside, and they kissed him, and I just laid there with him. And I told him how much I loved him over and over again. And I played him all the songs I played him through his life and sang to him. And one of my favorites was "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," because it's such a wistful song. It's such a beautiful song about a place that's better than where you are. And I sang to him, "Where happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow." And I wanted to go with him, but I couldn't. And I knew that I couldn't go with him. But I could hold his hand until he got to that door, and then he could go through the door, and I would be with him the whole time. And so at 1:12, he died. We turned off the ventilator, and that whooshing sound, that breathing, that artificial sound that had been part of my life for 5 months and 2 days was silenced. And there was just this vacuum in which there was nothing. And I just held him, and I told him I was so sorry. I was so sorry that as a mom, I couldn't save him, because that's what moms do. If you don't keep your children alive, you failed at your fundamental job as a mother. So I kept saying, "I'm sorry, and I love you so much." And I didn't want him to be scared if he could hear us. So I told him quietly and in a calm voice how much I loved him. I didn't want him to be scared. And he slipped away from us. Last week, I saw a Facebook post by a mom friend of mine who also lost a child to the same condition that he had. And she hinted at something terrible that had happened, but I didn't know what it was, so I reached out to her because we're friends, good friends, and I said, "What happened?" And she said, "My best friend's house burned down." And she got out, but her 11-year-old didn't. Her 11-year-old daughter died. And she was fighting for her life on a ventilator, and she's going to live. They took the breathing tube out yesterday. But I didn't know how her mom was going to go on, knowing that her little girl died in that fire, because my son died, but I was with him. I could hold him and tell him that I loved him and that I would meet him on the other side if I could. If there is another side, I'd be there with him. But she couldn't do that for her little girl. Her little girl just was gone. And so that last kiss, that last argument about brushing your teeth, that last did you do your homework, that was it. And she didn't know that. And so it's been 3 years since my son died this January. And as much agony as it has caused me, I am still filled with thankfulness that I was there when he slipped away and that I could hold him and tell him how loved he was. And I tried to think of a way to summarize it and say it to you guys. And the only thing I could think of was my favorite movie, Steel Magnolias. Malin is standing by her daughter's grave, and she said, as a woman, I know how lucky I am because I was there when this beautiful creature drifted into my life, and I was there when she drifted out again. Thank you.